This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to the Late Boomers podcast. For you artists and creatives of all ages listening today, my co-host Mary Elkins and I have a great guest for you to meet. Miriam Schulman, art business coach, host of the Inspiration Place podcast, and author of Artpreneur, the step-by-step guide to making a sustainable living from your creativity.
And that's the book. And I'm Mary Elkins. Miriam has helped thousands of artists around the world develop their skill sets and grow thriving art businesses so they can have the time and freedom to do what they love. Welcome, Miriam.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
It's great to have you.
Thanks. Please tell us about your background and some of the obstacles you faced and what led you to pursue your art full time.
Okay, so ever since I was in the fourth grade, I wanted to be an artist, but like many girls, I was told, or many people, I was told, well, you can't make a living that way. And I believed them. So when I went to college, and I was a financial aid student, so I didn't have the luxury of doing something that I didn't believe could support me, I took the practical route and I went to work on Wall Street.
Whoa.
However, when 9/11 happened, I knew I couldn't go back to that world. And I decided that I would do something different with my life. So I wasn't quite sure what that was at first. I painted on the side because I still didn't believe I could make a full-time living from my art. I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't believe I could make money that way. And I took a job at first teaching Pilates at a gym. When I was working for the gym, they taught me selling strategies to offer personal training packages because these upsells are a big income source for gyms. And it was then that I had my aha moment that these selling strategies could be used to sell anything, including art. And that's when I dedicated myself not to the gym, but to selling my portraits.
So that was your aha moment.
Yeah. Well, there was the wake-up call of 9/11, and many of us have similar moments in our lives. Sometimes it's a global event, 9/11, the pandemic. Sometimes it's an illness, a divorce, a death of a loved one that wakes us up to how precious life is and what is it that we're going to do with our lives.
Yeah, so
We
true.
get it. We started our podcast during COVID, and that was when remote recordings like this were just not so commonplace. Now they are, but we had a way to reach out and went for it.
We sure did. We just went for it. A lot of people don't go for it. They have great ideas, but they don't do anything about it. You did that, Miriam, that's why things happen. But I have a question about, you were talking about not believing that you could do it, or you were told that you couldn't do it. Is that something that could sabotage someone's success, an artist especially, their success?
Yeah, it's not just artists. My book, Artpreneur, is directed towards creative people. And not by artists, I don't just mean painters. It can be anyone in a creative field, but really any creative entrepreneur. There is a lot of social conditioning that is at play, especially, as you mentioned, for artists, but also for women. We're told not to take up space. And we're giving that message both explicitly and implicitly through the diet industry. You're supposed to be small. I live in New York City, so I see men and women riding the subways. The men have their legs splayed out. The women are sitting all cross-legged. They're trying not to even take up physical room with their bodies. So being given the message that you shouldn't desire sex and money has an impact on how we build our businesses. And then, as you said, Mary, many people have ideas, but they talk themselves out of it. And what happens, it happens on a subconscious level. Some of it is the external programming, but a lot of it really is our own brain survival mechanism, because we have, as humans, our brains have evolved for survival, not goal achievement. So anytime we're going to do something that's new, that makes us feel uncomfortable, our brain's going to come up with all kinds of reasons why it's a terrible idea. And the smarter you are and the more creative you are, the better you'll be at coming up with all those reasons. And this is also, of course, then where social conditioning is going to come into play, because those could play into your subconscious reasoning. So you want to do something, but it causes you fear either on a conscious or unconscious level. That leads to doubts whether this is going to work. Those leads to those stories. And what happens next is you're either going to go into procrastinating learning mode, because you have to figure it all out, because that way you won't fail, or you wallow in confusion and overwhelm. Deer in the headlights, I don't know what to do. But either way, that generally will tend to lead towards procrastination or not taking the steps to do those great ideas that you have. So it is not your fault if that's you. The three of us aren't special. We just kind of pushed past that and did it anyway, of what our dreams were.
Right. Well, you talk a little bit about the belief triad. So what is that, and how does it help raise our money mindset?
Okay, I love the belief triad. So if you've followed any kind of self-development, you've heard you got to believe in yourself. We've all heard that. We've heard you got to believe in what you do. That's two parts: your belief in yourself, belief in your art or what you do. The third part of belief triad really is critical, and that is belief in your audience or your customer. And that's where people will sabotage themselves the most. In my book, Artpreneur, I use an analogy with the movie Pretty Woman, and you both have seen it, right?
Yeah.
Seen it? Yeah. Okay. My friends like to tease me that my book is for women of a certain age. My references are from the 90s. Okay.
And our podcast is too.
Yeah. Right. All right. So, but just to refresh everyone's memory, there's that scene where Julia Roberts goes to Rodeo Drive to buy some clothes. And she has Richard Gere's gold cart, but those mean salespeople won't wait on her. Now, a lot of us think when we're in business that we're not that mean salesperson. But how many times have we thought to ourselves, she doesn't have the money, she won't pay, this is probably too expensive for her. You offer a discount before they say yes or no. That's what a lack of belief in your customer actually looks like. You're being that mean sales lady, not on purpose, but that's what's happening. So that's how you end up sabotaging your sales. And if you have uncertainty about your buyer, they will pick up on that. Now, that could be uncertainty you have about yourself, but any kind of uncertainty, they're going to pick up on, and it's repellent. The kind of energy you need when you're in business, especially when you're selling, is you need that confident energy to attract and make people feel comfortable about buying from you.
Well, explain a little bit about the money mindset. And what's the triad?
Okay, so the triad is, there's three things: belief in your art or what you do. So what you do could be you sell website design. It could be that you are a therapist. It could be that whatever it is, that there's belief in yourself, belief in what you do, and belief in your customer. The customer is the third piece.
Okay.
So that is the triad.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand. What words and phrases should people stop saying in order to raise their money mindset or get into this triad?
Okay, so it's less about getting into the triad, but some things that we tell ourselves, and we say it like it's facts, and it's a knee-jerk response, but it really lowers your money mindset. The number one thing I think that we should all eliminate from our vocabulary is stop saying, "I can't afford that," or "It's too expensive." Tell yourself the truth. The truth is, I choose not to buy that, or I choose not to make that a priority at this time. But when you constantly are saying, I don't have money,
then
it's not even true.
Money.
Like, right. And it's like, I can't afford that. It's not probably not even true. Like, okay, it's $100 more than maybe what you want to pay. The truth is you don't choose to prioritize buying that thing at this time. I choose not to, not that you don't have the money. So that's a very powerful thing to watch yourself and reframe that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Any other phrases or words?
I can't afford, it's too much money. So the I don't have money is one of them. I can't afford that. Is that really true? And is it too expensive? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe you just don't feel comfortable spending that. That's okay, but that doesn't make it too expensive.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's important to be careful with these phrases is because if you're offering something for sale and you're always labeling these other things as too expensive and you can't afford it, you will think that's what your customer's thinking about you.
Good point.
Yeah, for sure.
Talking about the belief triad, a lot of it has to do with trust, doesn't it? Trust in yourself. So many people don't trust themselves to actually accomplish what they'd like to accomplish. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Mary, that's a really great point that you brought up. So earlier I said that if you are feeling unsure about any part of the process, yourself, your art, or your customer, that belief triad, you're going to repel. So you need to feel confident. So how do you gain confidence? I love to tell the story about one of my clients in the book Artpreneur. I called her Margaret. Not her real name, real person, but not her real name, of course. And Margaret came to me and she said, I know that I'm supposed to do these things that we were talking about, but I procrastinate. And I says, well, why do you think that is? And she says, well, it's because I don't have good confidence. I said, no, it's the other way around. You lack confidence because you procrastinate. So if you look at the definition of self-confidence in the dictionary, it actually says trustworthiness.
Oh.
Self-trust in a person or a thing. So every time you don't do what you say you're going to do, it erodes that confidence. And every time you do what you say you're going to do, like you, Kathy and Mary, how you said you're going to start this podcast and you did it, it increases your confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It does. I get it. That really makes sense.
So people don't often use the word artist and entrepreneur in the same sentence. Can you give us pointers on how artists can become entrepreneurs and maybe a few steps that would empower them to do so?
Yeah, the very first thing is, and this is why I called my first chapter, Choose to Believe. So remember how we started this whole conversation. I said I wanted to be an artist. I just didn't believe that that was possible. So the very first thing that you should do if you want to become an artist, or really if you want to do anything in the world, is declare that identity. And that's why I started Artpreneur with a quote by Oprah Winfrey, which is, and I'm just going to read it word for word because it's not worth paraphrasing it. Every time you state what you want or believe, you're the first to hear it. It's a message to both you and others about what you think is possible.
Oh, I love that.
For somebody who wants to make it as an artist, I tell them, tell everybody you know, I am an artist. and claim that identity. It's a way for you to articulate what you do to the world and to not second guess yourself and keep away from imposter syndrome. But I give that advice, Kathy and Mary, to any woman who is looking to step into a new role. I am a podcaster. I am a clothing designer. I am a whatever it is. Tell everybody you know who you are. Make it true for yourself.
That's true. I am a writer. I am an actress.
I am a writer. Exactly.
Yeah, that's such a good piece of advice. And it's so hard to actually do that, to step out of your comfort zone and tell somebody that if you haven't been labeling yourself as that before.
Yeah.
Like, somebody that's been quietly painting art and keeping it in the closet and doesn't even mention it. And then to start calling themselves an artist to other people must be so hard.
So hard and so empowering once they start. So I got a message the other day from a new client. I think she's in her late 50s. And she said she's been telling each of her friends one by one. And at first it was so hard. And now she's unstoppable. Like, it has been so empowering just to be able to start declaring that to everyone.
And in a way,
That's
it's a promise to yourself that you have to do it. Because
It's a
all these other
commitment.
people, it's a total commitment because all these people are expecting you to do it.
Yeah.
And how important is it to have social media for artists who want to sell their work?
Well, here's where I get to be a little bit controversial because I have some opinions about that. Okay, so when I first started writing Artpreneur, the average engagement rate was 1%. So I was writing Artpreneur in 2022. And by the time I went to edit that chapter, the average engagement rate had dropped to 0.6%. And let's just be very clear what that means. That means out of 1,000 people, only 6 people will be engaging with you. That's what 0.6% is. Okay. Not 60%, not 6%, 0.6%. Now we're in 2025. The engagement rate on Instagram has dropped to 0.4%. And for all those influencers, the people who you're seeing who want to teach you how to increase your engagement rate if you just pay them money and do what they say. Well, their engagement rate is also less than 1%. It's better than 0.4%, but it's like maybe 0.7. So that is why social media is not an important part of your business strategy. And anyone who's been relying on it, like the TikTokers, had a wake-up call this month when it was almost banned. So then the question is, what's the alternative? So that is why I encourage everyone who's in business to build an email list. The average open rate for an email list is between 25 and 50%, and that's even still true in 2025. Email marketing is the cockroach of marketing. You can't get rid of it. It is not dead. So even if we use that low number, 24%, don't worry, I've done the math. I'm very good at math. So if you want to get the same results with email marketing as Instagram, you would need 6,000 followers on Instagram to get the same number of people to see what it is you're posting as 100 people as email subscribers. So which is easier, getting 100 email subscribers or 6,000 Instagram followers?
Good point.
I'm not sure because for podcasters, I'm not sure how podcasters build an email. I guess we have to offer something.
Right. So right now, here is how I do it. If you're listening to this podcast and you want a chapter of my book, go to schulmanart.com/believe. and you
Mhm.
put your name and your email, and I will send you a free chapter. So that's how
Mhm.
I do it for get people to then join my email list. And then every
Mhm.
week, whenever I have a new podcast, I send it out in my email.
Interesting.
Right. What can we learn from famous artists of the past, like Matisse, about how artists can sell their work?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. So, there were two sisters who collected lots of art who lived in Baltimore, Maryland. This was at the turn of the century. They were uber rich. Their family had made cotton that was sold to Levi Strauss to make jeans, and also made the uniforms of World War I. So they had a lot of money, and they used their money to buy art. They could buy any art in the world that they wanted. The younger of the sisters, the one who passed away last, bequeathed her collection to the Baltimore Art Museum. And in it, there were 700 Matisses and
My
only
goodness.
100 Picassos.
Only.
Now, she could have bought any art she wanted. And this was not when Picasso wasn't more expensive than Matisse. It had nothing to do with that, by the way. Okay. So the reason why she bought so many more Matisses was because he used to write her letters. So he would write her letters saying, here's the art I'm working on. I think you would like this. What can we do now in 2025 that's like writing letters?
Email.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Writing emails.
I love that. Letters do work, and especially personal handwritten ones.
They do still work. So one of the things that I do tell my clients is, in addition to the emails, is to send postcards to their best collectors and clients in the mail, because there's no spam filter on your front door.
That's true. Is that one way an artist can build a signature brand?
Yeah, well, a signature brand is more about your reputation. So it's more than just your colors and your logos. It's really what people say about you when you're not around. So building a signature brand is really about being real and honest and authentic and telling stories. Because right now we're living in the world of AI, and just putting out words that a robot can put out isn't going to do it anymore. So people want to hear from you. They want your stories. And like you were hinting at, Mary, they want, a physical thing that they can touch. Maybe you signed it, wrote a personal note on it. Anything that you can do to personalize the experience, make them feel like they really know you. No matter how big your business is, it will grow bigger because of that.
And it makes them feel important too, because you've taken the time to write to them.
Yes.
I have a question. What are the 5 most common mistakes people make when they're creating and selling their art and their services?
Okay. All right. So let's start with a few of them we've already touched on. But one of them is that the belief or the myth that cheaper is easier to sell. And it's not. So I'm going to give you some different examples. Would you hire the cheapest babysitter for your child or your grandchild?
Probably not, but it depends on
If
who it
you're
is.
if you it depends who it is, right?
Sometimes
If
the free one is the best.
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Okay.
Grandma.
Right. We all know about that. But what about your furry pet? If your pet needed surgery that would extend its life for another 5 years, and your vet told you it's going to be $2,000, are you going to look for the vet who only charges $190?
No.
Mm-mm. Or if you needed plastic surgery, you're not looking for the cheapest.
No. Looking for the best.
Yeah. So our customers are not looking for the cheapest either. what they're looking for is what's known as reassuringly expensive.
Reassuringly expensive. Good.
I have to write that down. I like that.
I mean, how do we think? Otherwise, nobody would buy designer watches. Everybody buys these very expensive watches.
That's a good one. So I did not talk about designer watches in my book, Artpreneur, because the publisher thought I would alienate readers. So if I talk about designer watches.
Oh, you were actually going to, but that's the
I
first
was
thing
going to. I am not a consumer of this.
Yeah, that's how those things got so big.
Well, I mean, but look at men. It's like, men especially, they love their expensive watches even more than women do.
Yeah.
So you could not sell a Rolex watch on eBay for $47. You couldn't do it. Nobody would believe it's real. And even if you tried asking $400, they still wouldn't buy it. So when I was researching this part of the book that never made it into the book, I went to a used jeweler in my town to see what they were charging for used Rolexes. And their cheapest used Rolex was $6,000, which was more money than what it cost to buy a brand new one online. I mean, I know they're all over the prices are all over the place.
At that time, definitely, yeah.
Yes. But the reason why is because the jeweler understood that he had to price it that high so people would believe that it was real, that if he priced it too low, that he would lose the sale.
Isn't it funny? I thought of watches. I mean, maybe just.
Yeah.
There you were researching watches.
Well, because it's one of those things that gets a high price tag or like a designer bag. Like why? Why is this so expensive? And there's something called a Veblen good, which people actually, it's named after the economist Veblen, where people will actually want to pay more. They desire it more because of the high price. Like a Birkin bag or a very expensive watch. Those are examples, or a Tesla.
And have we hit on some other, do we need some more mistakes people make when creating and selling?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the idea of procrastinating because, your brain gets in the way. And we talked about social media. That's a big one. People believe that they just need a bigger audience. They think that's their problem, when really the problem is that they're trying to sell cheap things at a volume. So a lot of times people have a problem, but they misdiagnose the problem. Like, oh, I only need a bigger social media following. No, you really actually only need to raise your prices or use email or use publicity. So usually it's a misdiagnosis of what their problem is. And I do walk you through all 5 of those common problems in my book.
Yeah. So you use PR, publicity.
Oh, of course. Well. Why am I here?
That's true. Right. Why are you doing the podcast? Exactly. Well, as long as we're talking about that, talk about your book, Artpreneur.
Thank you. So I wrote the book to recenter women in both the art world and the business world. And by recentering, it doesn't mean this book isn't for men. It's just that I'm inclusive in what I'm talking about in the book. So the book, it does have lots of women, people from different backgrounds, different religions, and I felt it's hard enough to believe that you can do something like become an artist, that it was important to show examples of what's possible, no matter who you are or what you look like.
Well, you talk about marketing diseases in your book. What is that? What are they?
Okay, we'll pick one. Okay. So one of the one that I talk about is Sleeping Beauty Complex. And in the Disney movie Sleeping Beauty, the fairy, one of the evil fairy says she pricks her finger, she's going to die or whatever, fall into a sleep. I forget the exact details. But the fairies then, the other fairies, are going to hide her away in the woods. And the next time you see Sleeping Beauty, she's this beautiful grown-up woman. You don't see the braces, you don't see the glasses, you don't see the pimples, you don't see, any of that puberty nonsense. Okay. Now, many of us want our businesses to be like that. We want to keep it hidden away and not take it out when it's going through that adolescent stage. We want to wait till it's perfect.
Oh,
I'm not ready yet.
I'm guilty of that.
Oh, many of us are. This is why I talk about it. Many of us are guilty of that. And we want it to be a grown-up business before we take it out into the world. But it really needs to go through that whole, you have to love, I call it, you have to love your baby now. So Kathy and Mary, it's just like with your podcast. I'm sure the podcast now is a lot different than it was in 2020.
Totally.
Okay. And it's gone through a lot, it's grown up since then. It's grown up in 5 years. Could you imagine if you didn't want to bring it out in 2020 because it was just this baby podcast?
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing, but we did it anyway.
Right.
You're not supposed to. It's okay. Yeah.
Men do that too. Men just go, they don't do the Sleeping Beauty contest. They just believe in themselves and they just go for it, often when they don't even know what they're doing. Yeah,
they actually have statistics that back up what you're saying, so that women, before they apply for a job, will think they have to meet 100% of the criteria, whereas men will apply for a job even if they only meet 60% of the criteria. So they actually have statistics to back up exactly what you're saying.
And probably they get hired.
They probably do.
Well, it's what we talked about earlier. Confidence is magnetic.
You are so right. Talk about another marketing disease.
Rapunzel style marketing. So they're all like
characters. I love the way you do that with fairy tales.
Yes. So what does Rapunzel do? Rapunzel's up in her tower waiting for the customers to come to her. So that is what Rapunzel style marketing is. And sometimes I see artists who, they have a website, but they don't have sales. And I'm like, yeah, you're waiting for the fish to jump into your boat. I mean, you have to go out and that's what marketing is. You have to go out and look for them. So Rapunzel style marketing is you think things just happen to you. You just wait for somebody to rescue you.
What, it doesn't? It's not fate? How about another one?
Characters? You have a Mickey Mouse one?
No, I don't.
Another fairy princess one?
There's one that I talk about not in my book, but I've been talking about a lot. I don't think I made it into the book, but Moana, the little Hawaiian girl. So the story of that one, your grandmother, so you've both have seen that one?
I'm not a grandmother. I see everything animated anyway.
Oh, you do? Did you see the movie Flow, by the way?
I heard about it.
I saw that by mistake with my husband the other night. We wanted to see another movie and we walked into the wrong theater. And like 15 minutes into it, my husband says, I don't think this is the preview.
And you loved it?
Yes. Yes. It's animated, no talking, just calming music and animals.
Well, then you'll love The Wild Robot. The Wild Robot is fabulous like that.
I will write that down.
Great story, hardly any dialogue. Beautiful animation, music.
So back to Moana.
Yeah, Moana.
The story or the theme there, for people listeners who didn't see the movie, is they had a beautiful enchanted island and it suddenly is not abundant anymore. And what happened was there was this goddess who had lost her heart. And then this is a spoiler alert. So if you don't want to know how Moana ends, you can fast forward this part. Okay. So they go out and there's this lava monster. And it turned out that the lava monster really is the goddess without the heart. And that's what a lot of us experienced during the pandemic, this feeling of losing our creativity and losing our heart. And what happens when you lose that inner core is you become burnt out, creative burnout, which I see as being like the lava monster. It's like you can't create in that state.
Yeah.
So it's about being willing to refill the creative well and nurture that heart that you have.
And I was listening to a message on a podcast the other day on the Mel Robbins podcast. She had a guest on that was explaining that anxiety is a reverse of creativity. So if you're feeling this anxiety, it's cutting off your creativity. And creativity can get rid of anxiety. So that's an interesting point too, that, you know, your creativity can kind of save you from the spiral you're going down.
Absolutely.
So if we get anybody to encourage their creativity today, this will be a good step. Tell us about your podcast now and your online classes. What is your podcast called?
Well, if you like what you heard today, my podcast is called The Inspiration Place. And it's for you if you are in business or you're creative or you want to hear more of our discussions about mindset, creativity, how to keep yourself from procrastinating, how to keep yourself from perfectionism. So all those things that hold us back from growing into our fullest, most evolved version of ourselves.
Excellent.
What about
So
your
really
online
good choice.
classes?
Yeah, I do. Right now, the only thing that I have offer online is I coach artists, which are visual artists on the business side of being an artist. I do have a free class for anyone who's listening. It is how to sell more art without being Insta famous. And you can access that class by going to Schulman Art. Schulman is with a C, SCHULMANART, schulmanart.com/masterclass. schulmanart.com/sell more art. All one word, sell more art.
And that would go really not just for visual artists, but artists and creatives of all sorts.
Any kind of creative entrepreneur. We'll touch upon the 5 problems. One of them, which talked about in great depth today, which is about pricing. But there, in my book, Artpreneur, there are 5 foundations for building a business, and every problem correlates to a solution. So it's a production problem. There's a production solution. And the 5 areas are production, pricing, prospecting, promotion, and productivity.
Well, we'd love to hear more about pricing, but I want to ask you about empathy and how it leads a customer to purchase something. You touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about it. What we all know, well, maybe we don't know what empathy is, but how do you use it in sales?
I'm really glad you asked that, Mary. And we did touch upon it a little bit, but the way I talk about it in Artpreneur is when you get an objection. For example, we talked about this earlier. Somebody says, I can't afford that. What is really going through their mind?
They don't
or
believe
it's
in
too
themselves.
expensive. What's really going through their mind? So if I'm trying to sell a $5,000 painting to Kathy isn't necessarily thinking whether Miriam Schulman is worth $5,000, whether Miriam Schulman's painting is worth $5,000. Kathy's probably worried about, is she worth spending $5,000 on?
Oh.
That's why that belief triad is so important, because you have to believe in your customer more than they believe in themselves. I have to believe that Kathy is worth spending $5,000 on.
How does an artist price their work then? You mentioned charm pricing and prestige pricing. Explain that a little bit.
Okay. So charm pricing is kind of like Target or Walmart pricing. You walk into any Target or Walmart and everything is $14.97 or whatever. It's something .97.
The dollar store.
It's a 5-pack. It's a package of underwear, $1.49 each. Now, that the idea of charm pricing is pricing something below the decimal point, or it could be not below the decimal point, but $497 instead of $500, with the idea of not so much tricking somebody, but the person will think of it as $497. They will think of it as being in the 400s rather than rounding it up. Now, sometimes that is a good thing to do, but not always. That's where prestige pricing comes in. Now, prestige pricing, it's not necessarily about pricing something higher. It's about rounded numbers. So pricing, instead of for $14.97, pricing it for $15. Instead of $4.97, pricing it for $500. They did research on champagne, where they priced the champagne at $39, $40, and $41. And the $40 champagne sold the best. And the reason why the researchers said is because the rounded numbers are processed by the emotional side of the brain. Where these odd numbers, these $14.97, $4.97, $4.99, those off numbers are processed by the logical side of your brain.
Oh.
So if you're selling a luxury good like art, which side of the brain do you want your customer using? The logical side or the emotional side?
Yeah.
Yeah. The emotional side every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Well, talking about pricing, how does an artist price their own work? I mean, it could be you look at it, you've worked hard on it, you've never actually stepped out, and now suddenly you have this gallery opening because you've been painting all of these in the dark, shall I say. You haven't stepped out. You have one of the marketing diseases of Rapunzel. And so, but how do you put a value on your own art? And then you have been saying there's no money in the middle. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so that's two different concepts and both excellent questions. So let's tackle the pricing first. So first of all, you're not going to be Rapunzel up in your tower. You will be like those champagne researchers and always bringing your art out and testing it. And if something is selling too quickly, you need to raise your prices. So things should take longer to sell. That is the right way it should be. So to always be testing higher prices. I remember when I was selling prints for a good size, 11 by 14 for $68. And I thought that was the sweet spot. They sold well. And then one year, because I'm teaching this all the time, so I'm like, well, let me test that. And I raised the prices to $75 and they sold better.
Yeah.
And then I raised the prices to $100 and there was no drop in sales. So I've seen this happen over again with my clients as well. One of my clients, Kayla, was really afraid that if she raised her prices, that she would lose her income. But she was burnt out as a vet tech. She had two small boys and she lived in Arkansas. So not in New York City, not in a wealthy community. And she was getting $1,500 for her commissions, which is a lot, but I knew her customers would pay more. So she raised her price to $3,500. And the same customer came back and bought it. And he didn't complain about the higher price. Not only did he not complain, but he bought the $3,500 canvas as well as two additional artworks. So she made so much more money just by raising her prices. And that makes a world of difference. $2,000 extra dollars, that's life-changing for a single mom with two boys.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
talk about the money in the middle. I'm curious. There's no money there.
Okay, so this is about people pleasing. So people pleasing, whether you're doing it to your family or you're doing it to your customers, people pleasing, for those who aren't familiar with the term, it's you basically want to do what's most popular, what everybody wants. And by that, I'm not saying you shouldn't follow trends. But if you're doing it just to please people, so you don't want to share your authentic self, you're afraid of who's going to judge you because maybe you're single, maybe you don't have kids, maybe you're Jewish like me. So all these things you're worried about, but what happens is that people never really get to know you. So even though just by my saying I'm Jewish right now, there's people here who listen, who that's going to be a big turnoff for them. And that's fine. I'll take that, because there's going to be people on the other side who are going to be, happy that I'm brave enough to say who I am. Where there's no money is the people who are not willing to share their true self, whatever that is. Well, whatever it is that they're afraid of that's going to turn people off.
Well, you do talk about embracing, in your book, I believe, embracing your inner weirdo. Well, can you talk on that a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So the word weird dates back hundreds of years. So in Shakespeare Macbeth, there were the Weird sisters. And weird didn't mean the same thing it means today. So weird actually meant magical or fate or destiny. And what happened is over the centuries, as the supernatural became vilified, the word weird took on a negative connotation. So what I talk about in that chapter, Embrace Your Inner Weirdo, is those very things that we think make us weird are what makes us magical. That's what people want. They want to see the real you. Even if you have braces and glasses and pimples and your business is still a baby and you're still figuring it out.
I get it. And Miriam, what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
Okay, so I'm going to end today with the final words in the same way I ended the book Artpreneur, which is to keep marching forward. So if you're not sure what direction to go in, it doesn't matter if you go 10 steps in the wrong direction, you'll learn a lot more than marching in place or staying still. And do not blame your boots. In other words, don't blame the circumstances. Keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you will get there.
Oh, I love that. That is the best advice. Thank you, Miriam. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Miriam Schulman, art business coach, podcast host, and author of Artpreneur, the step-by-step guide to making a sustainable living from your creativity. You can reach Miriam via her website, schulmanart.com. That's SCHULMAN art.com. And Miriam, please tell our audience again how to get a free chapter of your book and how to join your masterclass free.
Sure. So the 2 free gifts I have for you today are Chapter 1, Choose to Believe. Go to schulmanart.com/believe, and I will send you Chapter 1 for free. And if you want to jump in on that free masterclass, How to Sell More Art Without Being Insta-Famous, go to schulmanart.com/sellmoreart. Both are free.
Perfect. Thanks for listening, boomers and artists of all ages. Tune in next week when we will have another exciting guest to inspire you. Please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube and take us along in the car and on walks on your favorite audio platform. Let us know what gets you inspired. We are on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. Please share the Late Boomers podcast info with your friends who may not yet be listening to podcasts. Thanks again, Miriam.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. This was so much fun.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.